Chillify channel, I'm ready to bring your captivating stories to life. My best friend and I needed 30 million, so we decided to marry into the Gu family, becoming wives to the two Comatose twin brothers. She became the elder daughter-in-law, marrying Liam Gu. I married Ethan Gu. Day after day, we'd sit by their beds, munching on sunflower seeds and gossiping. They really were identical, like two drops of water. My friend nodded in agreement. I wonder if that asterisk place is identical too? My eyes lit up. Let's find out. My friend seemed hesitant, but I insisted. We're their legal wives, aren't we? What's wrong with admiring our husbands a little? But after we left, in the once silent room, a head stirred slightly, and a voice whispered, "Brother, maybe we should wake up. If you wake up, I'll wake up too." After the horrific car accident, news of the Gu family's twin young masters falling into a vegetative state quickly spread. Mrs. Gu, who had always struggled with fertility, was utterly heartbroken. She sought out every master and high-ranking doctor for treatment, but all efforts were in vain. Coincidentally, I was a fortune teller, and my best friend Anne was a doctor. Even if they lie there forever, I cannot let them leave without heirs, without wives, Mrs. Gu cried in despair. I immediately spoke up. Mrs. Gu, if you're looking for wives for your two young masters, Anne and I are the most promising candidates. Huh, I continued. Think about it, if we marry into the family, we will certainly dedicate ourselves to caring for them, doing everything to wake them up. After my passionate persuasion, Anne and I officially entered the Gu household. Mrs. Gu clarified, a 3-year contract after which we could divorce. If her sons still hadn't woken up by then, each of us would receive 30 million. But if they woke up, each of us would get 300 million. I flashed a bright smile. They'll definitely wake up. Then I secretly whispered to Anne, anyway, 30 million is already a steal. We'd earn quite a bit each year, and it's so easy. Where else could we find a job this good? Anne nodded in agreement, giving me a thumbs up, praising my excellent calculations. Liam and Ethan remained in a deep sleep. Anne and I would just sit around, cracking sunflower seeds whenever we had free time. Money truly brings happiness. I pointed to a fruit platter on the table. Anne, guess how much this bunch of green grapes costs? 80,000? No, a whole 800,000, Anne gasped. We were orphans who grew up in an orphanage. We'd never experienced such a lavish life. According to Mrs. Gu's rules, we had to be by their beds for at least 10 hours a day, without phones or computers. So, all we could do was chat, crack sunflower seeds, and guess the prices of things, clicking our tongues in amazement. Our meals were taken care of, and patient care wasn't even our responsibility. 3 months flew by in a flash. I gazed at the twin brothers, their faces as handsome as sculpted statues, then turned to Anne. Anne, they really are identical, Anne nodded. So I wonder if that asterisk place is exactly the same? My eyes gleamed with curiosity. Should we try to check? Wouldn't that be weird? What's weird about it? You examine the older brother, I'll examine the younger. We're their legal wives. What's wrong with looking at our husbands a little? But if each of us only checks one, how can we compare? Her question was perfectly logical. I immediately pulled out a tape measure, one for me, one for her. We each slipped under our husbands' blankets and began to measure. I sat up first. 18 centimeters. Anne also sat up, her face flushed crimson. Also 18 centimeters. My eyes widened. Identical down to the millimeter? She was so embarrassed she didn't know where to hide her face. I pouted. What are you shy about? You're a doctor. Forget patience, you've examined countless mannequins. Anne shook her head, indicating, this isn't quite the same. I wanted to understand what my friend meant, but couldn't, so I just nodded obediently and said, yeah, okay. I sneaked a glance at Ethan, trying to suppress a laugh. This was truly the first time I'd seen a man's jewel in real life. Suddenly, I noticed Ethan's lips seemed to curve slightly. He looked like he was smiling. Startled, I whipped my head towards Anne and said, Anne, I think my brother-in-law just smiled. Anne immediately rushed over to examine him for a moment, then looked up at me and said, he's not awake, you're just imagining things. I nodded anxiously, both scared and regretful, secretly thinking, if only a little more, I would have had 300 million. Anne was just as disappointed, sitting down next to me and continuing to crack sunflower seeds. I sat down too, eating and asking, do you think they can hear what we're saying? Most likely, yes. So what if they wake up and know what we just did? Anne patted my hand gently, reassuring me, don't worry, they can't wake up. Why? Many international medical experts have consulted, and they all concluded that they can't recover. What are you worried about? Despite her words, I still felt a bit uneasy. I stood seriously by Ethan's bed and said, "Don't be angry with me, okay? I was just curious, so I tried measuring. If you feel it's unfair, I'll tell you my bust size right now. It's 36D. The hospital room fell silent once more. Exactly at 5:00 p.m., Anne and I left work as usual. We had no idea that right after we left, both men in the hospital beds opened their eyes. Ethan glanced at his brother and spoke up. "Brother, mine is 19. Liam turned over, sluggishly trying to adjust his still stiff body, and curtly replied, "Get lost." Something was wrong. It was truly unusual. I clenched my fingers, pacing around the hospital room. According to my fortune-telling, they should have woken up a long time ago. Besides, Ethan clearly smiled secretly yesterday, I muttered to myself. Anne, who was reading a medical book, looked up at me with helpless eyes. "Come on, vegetative patients can sometimes dream and smile. It's normal. They even have morning erections." My eyes suddenly lit up. Morning erections. Curiosity surged within me. I immediately flung back Ethan's blanket. My gaze was fixed on the sensitive area below. Nothing, completely flat, unusually flat. I turned to Anne, looking bewildered. "He doesn't have it. Does that mean he can't use it?" Anne pressed her hand to her forehead, rubbing her temples. I began to suspect. "You go check Liam, see if he has it." "I'm not going." "Why? I'm sure he does." "How can you be so sure?" Anne's face flushed crimson, and she remained silent. I wouldn't let it go, constantly probing, until she finally mumbled, "I saw it yesterday." "Oh my God, you dared to sneak a peek behind my back?" I was stunned. The Anne I knew had always been discreet, gentle, and very well-mannered. I couldn't believe this was happening. Anne was about to say something but stopped, her face turning even redder. I looked down at Ethan lying next to me. His mouth seemed to twitch slightly again. And Liam, in the bed next to him, his earlobes also seemed a little red. I rubbed my eyes a few times to make sure I wasn't mistaken. To confirm my suspicions, I turned to Anne and asked, "Anne, my dear, do you think if a vegetative patient is tickled, they would know how to avoid it?" The soft feather glided over Ethan's nose, palms, soles of his feet, and even his hip area. Absolutely no reaction. He lay still as a wooden plank. I handed the feather to Anne and said, "You try it with your husband." Anne stood up and, under my close supervision, began to tickle Liam. Liam subtly furrowed his brow, looking as if he was having a nightmare, his face clearly showing pain. Anne quickly pulled her hand back and said, "Stop, stop. What if Mrs. Goose suddenly comes in to check? We'd be dead for sure." I froze, suddenly remembering a horrifying detail in the corner of the patient room. There was a camera. I trembled, turning my head, and exclaimed, "We're doomed. There's a surveillance camera." Anne stared wide-eyed in astonishment. "Oh no, we're really finished." Mrs. Gu was known for cherishing her sons more than gold. If she saw us doing these things to her comatose sons, she would certainly not spare us. Sure enough, it wasn't long before Mrs. Gu stormed into the room. The clicking sound of her high heels echoed on the floor. Her face was almost distorted with anger as she yelled, "You two, go to the main villa and clean it for me. 1 week. Reflect on yourselves immediately." Dragged out by bodyguards, I still felt wronged and indignant. Because just as I was leaving, I caught a glimpse of Ethan smiling secretly again. In the hospital room, Ethan sat up, sneezing several times in a row. He tilted his head to look at his brother and said, "Brother, my little wife is going to torment me to death. What should I do now?" Liam also reached up to rub his nose. He had almost been exposed just now. He looked at his younger brother with a gaze full of resentment and said, "Your wife, you deal with her yourself. Why are you asking me?" Ethan was silent for a moment, then asked, "Brother, did sister-in-law really sneak a peek at you?" Liam turned his face away without answering. "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Sister-in-law looks so dignified and gentle. Who would have thought she'd dare to do something like this behind my back? Wouldn't she have if your wife hadn't instigated it? What does that have to do with my wife? She's a good girl." Ethan immediately frowned, looking displeased. This habit of fiercely defending his wife clearly came from Mrs. Gu. Mrs. Gu stood nearby, watching her 2 precious sons, only able to roll her eyes in exasperation before turning around to go shopping for a quiet time. Since the tickling incident, Anne and I had become much more well-behaved when in the hospital room. Anne meticulously read medical books every day, while I just cracked sunflower seeds and snacked to pass the time. Since the marriage contract officially took effect, I had been living as if completely isolated from the outside world for an entire year. Forget phones or computers, I wasn't even allowed to touch the TV. Throughout that year, I always felt something was very fishy. Normally, vegetative patients require catheters, yet the Gu twin brothers didn't. Furthermore, a body sustained only by nutrient infusions would surely waste away over time. But these two were completely different. On the contrary, their bodies seemed firm, their muscles quite defined. I suspected they had been secretly exercising at night. Unfortunately, I had no proof, and even less a logical reason. But if they had truly woken up, why would they pretend to be in a coma for an entire year? What for? I thought for a long time, then murmured to Anne, Anne, are they trying to avoid giving us the 300 million? I leaned close to Anne's ear and whispered, we both suspect they've been awake for a long time, right? Actually, there are many clear signs pointing to it. So, if they're really awake but still deliberately pretending to be in a coma, the only reason can be that they don't want to give us 300 million. Tusk, the mighty Goo Corporation is worth trillions, yet for 300 million, these two brothers would rather lie in bed for an entire year. I told Anne all my deductions. Anne stroked her chin, nodding. Sounds plausible. So Anne and I discussed for a while. Finally, I stood up straight in front of the bed and solemnly declared, Mr. Goo, I know you two are awake. I also understand that you don't want to give us 300 million. Actually, it makes sense. We haven't done much, and receiving such a large sum would feel a bit awkward. How about this? You two don't have to pretend anymore. Let's stick to the old contract, 30 million, and then we'll divorce, okay? The two handsome men in the bed didn't move an inch. I continued to persuade them. I advised them to be a bit more generous, not too stingy. 30 million is nothing to them, but to us, it's a life-changing amount. Still no reaction. That afternoon, exactly at 5 o'clock, Anne and I left work as usual. In the hospital room, both brothers opened their eyes simultaneously. Brother, should we wake up now? If you wake up, I'll wake up too, but if we wake up, she'll divorce us. What should we do now? She thinks I'm stingy, pretending not to wake up to avoid the 300 million. My image in her heart is about to shatter. Ethan grew increasingly sad as he spoke, sitting on the edge of the bed and sobbing. Liam closed his eyes, his face full of helplessness. Can you talk a little less? Company work is piled up like a mountain. Ethan suddenly remembered the enormous amount of work that had accumulated all day, his face immediately falling. Both brothers looked up at the window, lamenting in unison, when will this ordeal finally end? After a long while, Ethan suddenly spoke up. Brother, I have a plan. Ethan woke up, but unfortunately, his mind had become completely foolish. His IQ had regressed to that of a 6-year-old. Aside from his birth mother, he recognized and clung solely to me. When he hugged me tightly, whimpering, and called me my beloved wife, my eyes went dark. He's really, really foolish now. I couldn't believe what I had just heard. Mrs. Goo cried like rain and wind, almost fainting on the spot. Ethan, with his tall, long-legged stature, wearing a hospital gown, sat cross-legged on the floor, engrossed in eating a lollipop. He looked up at me with innocent eyes. Wifey, do you want some? Then he offered the half-eaten lollipop stick to my face. I don't really want any. Wifey doesn't like me anymore, boo-hoo-hoo. Large, pea-sized tears rolled down Ethan's handsome face. My head buzzed. Oh my God, what in the world is happening? Anne was also completely frozen. After careful examination, she confirmed that Ethan had a cerebral contusion, which severely affected his intellect. Oh my goodness, he's really foolish now, she exclaimed in horror. I secretly counted on my fingers, then realized with dismay that I had accidentally fallen into a destined romantic calamity. My life is over. I looked down at Ethan. Could it be that the romantic calamity I have to face is him? Wifey, why aren't you comforting me? Ethan cried, sobbing, his eyes brimming with tears, looking at me expectantly. I trembled, took a deep breath, then turned to Mrs. Goo. He's awake now, so can I leave now? Hearing this, Mrs. Goo cried even more violently. Mother and son continued to sob uncontrollably, as if singing a duet. In the adjacent bed, Liam remained perfectly still, pretending to be fast asleep. The entire hospital room suddenly became a chaotic marketplace. Ethan and I were taken back to the Goo family's main residence. Mrs. Goo wiped her tears, choking back sobs. In the past, I struggled alone to build my career. It wasn't until I was older that I resorted to artificial insemination to have these two children. They have no father. Now, Ethan only recognizes you. Naomi, you have fulfilled your promise. I will have 300 million transferred directly to your account. Or, could you stay and take care of him for a little longer? Don't worry, money won't be an issue. I've always loved generous ladies. Mrs. Gu offered 300 million a year. I immediately agreed. I could take care of Ethan until he went to the grave if needed. So, this was the destined love trial I had to endure. Ethan's condition was unstable, especially his extreme clinginess. He'd cling to me all day, not letting go, even insisting on hugging me while sleeping. For 300 million a year, I had literally become a living body pillow, nothing more, nothing less. I just didn't know how Anne was doing. Mrs. Gu continued to enforce the ban on phones, computers, and TV, preventing us from contacting the outside world. Even wanting to gossip with Anne became a luxury. "Wifey, why aren't you looking at me?" Ethan whined, pouting. A man over 1.85 meters tall was now curled up on the sofa, burrowing into my arms. I gently stroked his head, caressing his short, soft, hedgehog-like hair. "I am looking, always looking. My eyes are always fixed on you. I love it so much." Ethan was both handsome and adorable. My heart couldn't help but flutter a little. But after about 3 months, I started to feel something was wrong. At night, whenever I fell asleep, Ethan would secretly leave the bed and sneak into the study. He also took advantage of my sleep to steal kisses, thinking I was unaware. In reality, his kisses became increasingly aggressive. The hickeys on my body became more and more obvious. I couldn't ignore them even if I wanted to. Click asterisk. The bedroom door creaked open slightly. Ethan tiptoed out cautiously, taking one careful step at a time. I also gently got out of bed, holding my breath and following him. The study door was half open, and I heard Ethan on the phone. "Brother, how are things on your side?" The voice on the other end was unclear. I only vaguely heard Ethan's somewhat smug tone. "Everything's great on my end. Naomi loves me more and more. But this can't go on forever. Does she still think I'm a child? I told you you have to cling to her." "You locked sister-in-law up? Why? Did she really remember everything? Is she still insisting on divorce? What should we do now? I'm a little scared. What if Naomi also remembers everything and demands a divorce?" The more I listened, the more I felt something was terribly wrong. Locked up? Who was locked up? A flash of insight struck me. I immediately kicked open the study door, my face red with anger. "Let Anne go immediately." Ethan froze on the spot. He looked at me, his pupils trembling, the phone in his hand almost dropped. As his hand fumbled, he accidentally pressed the speaker button, and a male voice, identical to Ethan's, came from the phone. I think I heard Naomi's voice. Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed. It took him a moment to speak. I immediately rushed forward, snatched the phone, and gritted my teeth. "Liam Gu, where did you lock Anne up? Release her at once. This is between you two, you're breaking the law." "Shut up." Liam's tone was icy, his attitude extremely poor. Ethan immediately snapped out of it, snatched the phone back, and angrily said, "What's wrong with you? How can you talk to Naomi like that?" Liam was silent for a moment. "Worry about your own wife first." "Let Anne go?" I was both furious and worried, my mind unable to process anything else besides Anne's safety. Liam maintained a calm voice. "I didn't lock her up." "I don't believe you. Let me talk to her." I wished I could reach through the phone and tear his mouth open. Through the phone, I heard slow footsteps, then the sound of an iron door opening, followed by a low voice mumbling a few words. Next, Anne's familiar voice rang out. "Naomi, I'm okay." I almost burst into tears right then. From the orphanage until now, Anne and I had never,